Well, Tracy, let's widen out this conversation and get some additional perspective. We're now joined by Ozan Özgürel. He's of Tantu Capital Partners. He's a man who's very close to what's happening when it comes to the Turkish story. Thanks for coming on the program. Let's start with the scenarios here, because you've got what the market appears to be seeing as the base case, which is a yes vote on this referendum. The concern is the longer-term implications of this. Yes, short-term stability, relative stability, extension of the status quo of President Erdogan's grip on power. What's your read on how this changes the longer-term view on Turkey?
Sure. Look, I mean, it's logical that if there's a yes vote, then short-term stability is the reality, right? But the question on everyone's mind really is, what does that mean for the checks and balances that, of course, a lot of international investors will look for, especially if there is a Turkish-style presidency in play. I mean, people talk about, well, this is the same thing as the US presidency. Well, actually, it's not. And the separation of power between the judicial branch, the parliamentary branch, and the executive branch will have to be very clear, and will have to be marketed and communicated extremely clearly to investors. And I think that is the one big unknown at the moment.
What is this going to do to economic reforms if the yes vote goes through?
Look, and that is the...
And that's where there isn't any clarity as much as there should be.
Exactly, and there should be clarity because, frankly, what every investor wants to see out of the Turkish executive branch is the continuation of the significant reforms that they had done in the first part of their power, effectively.
Yeah.
And so far we don't know. But I mean, I do think that if there is a yes vote that comes out at the end of today, there will be some focus on continuing the reforms because Turkey is dependent on foreign direct investment to be able to finance its chronic current account deficit.
Exactly.
That will only happen if there is some sort of net guidance from the president's branch.
So that's the yes vote scenario. Let's assume a no vote comes through. What is that going to do to, is that really going to rattle up political stability? Because we understand that the administration will just consider giving it another go at a later date.
Frankly, I don't believe that's really a realistic possibility because that will come with a significant political cost. Erdogan has bet a lot of his credibility on this. And it is a referendum. It's not a political. It's not an election. Therefore, it's quite simple. It's either a yes or a no. And to be able to then say, well, okay, fine, it's a no, but let's do it again in a few months' time. I don't think it's something that he or his administration will really want to see. So what will happen is no will cause short-term instability. Markets have priced in ultimately a yes vote. But in the longer term, what will have to be again made very clear is, how does Turkey go forward from this? They have to actually make a very clear statement saying this is either it or not. And you may actually see early elections come through if there is a no vote.
We've spoken a little bit about the Turkish lira and the predicament that the central bank finds itself in. What do they have to do going forward? Where does it leave them and their credibility and their connection or lack thereof with monetary policy realities?
Look, Yusuf, no matter what happens, they have to ensure markets that they're independent, because right now there are a lot of question marks from foreign investors to say, well, okay guys, you're independent, but really, I mean, how are you going to react to what's happening around the globe? Because we don't live independent to each other. I mean, you know, you have one US central bank that is on a rate hike cycle with the US economy growing significantly healthily. And in order to make sure that the flight to quality doesn't happen drastically, and this, by the way, is the emerging market question in general, the Turkish central bank will have to show markets that it is ready to be able to defend the Turkish lira if need be. And the only tool that they really do have is monetary policy, because the divergence of monetary policy has always been the significant driver between the exchange rate volatility that we've seen within the currency wars that we actually are right now around the world.
For investors looking to put money to work, how would you tell them to trade this referendum story and the scenarios that will follow from there?
Look, frankly, Turkey right now, I think, is and has to be a long-term play, and therefore the asset classes that the investors are looking at is quite important. I mean, infrastructure, energy and power in particular. Turkey is an energy-hungry country. It's a young, growing country, and it will always need investment in the energy space. And therefore, I would advise investors to take a look at the growth sectors within Turkey and not to think short-term. Because you can't afford to think short-term in not just Turkey, but in emerging markets in reality, whereby we're going through a tectonic shift of global geopolitics, the world heating up, and the macroeconomics changing in a unforeseen way, actually.
Yeah, and what about the strength of the U.S. dollar? That's also weighing heavily on your outlook, isn't it?
Correct, it is.
Yeah.
Because if you're a foreign investor and you're looking to invest in Turkish lira assets, you may make quite a healthy return, but it doesn't really mean much if the Turkish lira continues to devalue significantly. And it's quite difficult to price in right now, and that's why an air of stability, and that means communication coming from the administration, will be very important for investors.
Yes. Very briefly, has the geopolitical tensions in neighboring Syria and the uncertainty around that, has that clouded your view in any way?
Actually, if anything, it does give even more prominence to Turkey. When we look at what's happening in Syria.
Because it is a G20 member, it is a platform for a lot of engagement in this part of the world.
There is a lot of rhetoric around, well, is Turkey as important as before? Is this important going to diminish? Frankly, I don't think it will. Turkey is a NATO ally, it's a G20 member, and it plays a tremendously important role in being able to manage and contribute to the resolution of the unfortunate conflict that we're seeing in Syria, and as you know, there are many facets to it. So Turkey will continue to be a very important participant in those discussions.
Ozan, great speaking to you this morning amidst a lovely backdrop here. It's incredible.
It is beautiful.
Ozan Ozgural of Tantu Capital Partners, thanks again for coming on the show. Tracy?